Hello, basketball fans. It's Dave from Fantasy Basketball Analyzer, and I'm here to help you get ready for Week 7 of your fantasy schedule. We'll do the normal. We'll talk about how many games are played, take a look at the back-to-backs, the strength of schedule. Before we get into that, what do I always say? But first, beer! Today I'm drinking a Virtuoso beer by Lord Hobo Brewing. Virtuoso feels almost like an obvious nickname that we should just give to Luka Doncic right now. If we take a look back at November, which means I can take off my cold weather gear for the December slate, he averaged 32 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists, and obviously is the MVP of any fantasy team out there because he's been dominant. So, I'm going to go on to referring to Luka as the Virtuoso at only age 20. And this beer is pretty good, by the way. Virtuoso by Lord Hobo Brewing. It's got like a 93 overall on Beer Advocate for the rating. It's pretty tasty. It's a double IPA, so, don't screw around with it. But it's good. It's also by Lord Hobo Brewing, and I'm totally taking names right now on who we should call Lord Hobo, because that feels like a nickname that's wasted. Someone in the league has to be Lord Hobo. And it can't be Robin Lopez, because we already know he's a bat squatch. Although, again, he comes to mind for Lord Hobo, maybe. If Chris Caveman is still in the league, the Caveman, although Caveman was a pretty good nickname too. So, Lord Hobo. Open. You leave a comment in the bottom who reminds you of Lord Hobo, and if we get a really good, I'll call it out in the next episode. All right, without further ado, let's look forward into December's schedule. So, Week 7 starts December 2nd, and we've got 4 games, 3 games, but the 2 games are what we care about, Boston and San Antonio. Personally, for me, I think it just means you sit your Spurs. I don't think anyone on the Spurs has been so dominant that 2 games are even worth considering. Maybe that's being harsh, but no, it's not. For Boston, Kemba, if you're in a locks league, Kemba is probably still worth playing. Marcus Smart's been awesome on defense for real NBA, but I don't think he's worth it at 2 games. A lot of ancillary pieces. You really need 4 games. I don't think Tatum's playable at 2 games. But, of course, it all depends on your bench. And if you're not talking weekly lock leagues, it's fine. You cycle them in for 2 games. You don't have to worry about it. So, you can see this. And then, you know what? Last week, through an error, I ended up showing the wrong schedule at some point, so I ended up making a Google Docs and shared it. I went ahead and I made it again. So down in the comments below, you can get a link to my Google Docs. I've got the link, so if you need to see the strength of schedule or the pace of play grid, then you can click there. Otherwise, you can just keep watching the YouTube video and give me views, and that works for me too. All right, jumping over to our pace of play stats. So, same thing as we've done before. If you've been watching the show, I take the pace of play and the defensive efficiency, marry them together to find an average, and that's how I consider strength of schedule for fantasy. There's a lot of different ways you could look at strength of schedule. If we're looking forward into December, it may be of interest to note from an NBA standpoint, the Lakers have the hardest strength of schedule coming up for the month of December after having the easiest strength of schedule. But that's using kind of more standard strength of schedule metrics, looking at other, your opponent's win-loss record and stuff like that. And personally, I don't think that directly impacts fantasy as much, although as a basketball fan, I do think it could be interesting. If you believe a bunch in, home-away stats and stuff like that, or, playing on a back-to-back when the other team wasn't playing on a back-to-back, there's some interesting stats for that help, impact the fact that the Lakers have a very hard December coming up. If you want that, NBA.com actually has an interesting article. It's NBA.com/December schedule analysis. All 30 NBA teams with a bunch of dashes. But if you go to the homepage, you should be able to see it, or you just search for it. But they'll break down how they use it. And it's worth checking out. But that's all basketball related, and I'm going to try and keep us fantasy focused. So, looking at our strength of schedule. That was a tangent there. We've got Washington, Atlanta, New Orleans at the top as people you're excited to play against. Memphis and Golden State are right in that for both pace of play and just lack of defensive prowess right now. Since I mentioned Memphis' name, and I don't want to forget about it, Ja is ruled out week to week with back spasms right now. He didn't travel for the games on the weekend for Memphis. I'm not sure when he's going to come back, so he might not be playing Ja this week. Look for other options. I had to sit him in a couple leagues. Weakest or strongest defense, weakest matchups for fantasy. Same kind of culprits. We're looking at Denver. We're looking at Orlando. Down here at the bottom, they shuffled a little bit. In fact, maybe we should bring up week 6 as well. And then we can take a look at the two of them together. But we kind of have our main teams that we know are good at defense. The Lakers have been good. Orlando's been really good. Denver's been good, but consistently down here. But I think there's a more interesting discussion if we talk about like the shot selection versus like opponent's field goal percentage going in. If you're a member of Cleaning the Glass and can check out their advanced stats, I don't think Denver's defense has been as strong as it's looking. Their opponents have just been missing some shots. I think they've been getting a little lucky. So I don't think that really, again, that feels like a basketball talk, less of our fantasy talk. Because I don't think you're going to necessarily drill down to like, I have this great shooter and go against Denver and there's this soft, so I'm playing him anyway. Maybe for DFS, but you're looking at your whole week for your team as a whole. They still have a pretty slow pace of play. And right now they've got a strong defense, so that puts them down here. So Denver, Orlando, Lakers. Toronto has a strong defense. This is the first time I think we've had them in the bottom 4. But I didn't worry about them as much when I started marking up the schedule grid. But there are exceptions. So like when Toronto plays Philly, two teams that we think of as having very good defense, that game through both pace of play and strong defense might be a little bit lower in the like tasty matchups or lack thereof. Bland matchups, maybe, I should say. All right, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself talking about strength of schedule already. Normally we do back-to-backs, but let's just roll with it. So, we're talking strength of schedule. Let's bring up our grids. We got Boston, San Antonio with 2 games. Like I said, other than Kemba, I'm not sure anyone on the teams are playable at 2 games. Maybe not even Kemba, but it depends on what you have for options. If you disagree with me and you think there's someone who's a must-play even at 2 games, someone who's in that LeBron, Luka category, and I'm somehow overlooking it, maybe I'm having a mental block. Maybe you're wrong and just disagree with me. Well, go ahead. Let me know in the comments. I'm open to the discussion or just being proven wrong, and I'd rather have the best information out there. So, beyond those guys with 2 games, you can kind of see the rest. The red boxes are bad matchups. The green boxes are good matchups based on pace of play and all that. The note that really stood out to me was what I already kind of mentioned. Philly versus Toronto is playing each other. Those are 2 teams. I didn't go out of my way to flag every Philly matchup in Toronto as a bad matchup. But them playing each other, the pace of play and the defense should both be there. So I wouldn't expect a huge fantasy output that Sunday, unless you're looking for defensive stats. But as with anything, I don't think any games are like full-on stay away, especially when you're talking about for the whole week. I think if you're talking daily fantasy sports, then there is more of like, oh, someone's going against Orlando. Orlando's playing slow and has good defense. I'm less interested in playing someone if I've only got 1 game, try and win some money at DFS. Maybe you avoid certain things more. I don't think that should really come into your week long. You kind of know your guys unless there's some real standout. Something that did stand out for me, though, is that Dallas, well, they have 4 games. 2 of them are good matchups at New Orleans at New Orleans and home against New Orleans. Minnesota and Sacramento, no one's defense is scaring you. Minnesota's got a pretty decent pace of play, so that's a strong week overall. I am curious. I don't think that Holiday is going to just shut down Luka. Because Holiday is one of the better guards out there, we get to see, hopefully, a big Luka Holiday matchup at each of their home courts this week. And I'm curious what to see the virtuoso be able to do. Is he able to still pull off the sky-high numbers? I don't think he's going to have a bad game. I don't think he's going to have a bad week. But I think it'll be an interesting test to see, like, do the numbers say sky-high or are they kind of coming back down into reality? All right, not to skip over it, for anyone who's checking for our back-to-backs, we do have the back-to-back schedule. I want to share that grid too. Like I said, I'm going to include these things in Google Docs. I'll put a link down below. As soon as I get the fantasy site up, we've got it registered, fantasybasketballanalyzer.com, but I don't have the site up yet. So So hopefully for next week's schedule show, I'll have at least this up and I can post these there for you. If anyone's looking for a hobby or reaching out, go ahead, reach out to me. All right, looking at the schedule, we've got a handful of back-to-backs across the board, but if we're looking at the people we really are normally concerned about, the Clippers resting players and Memphis resting players, neither of them have it. The Lakers have 4 games. They've got a back-to-back in there. They've got 3 games away. That touches on what I already talked about with their strength of schedule. They've got some tough sledding ahead for December. Out of the 14 games the Lakers have in December, 10 of them are going to be against teams with a winning record. 9 of those 14 are on the road. So starting this Tuesday, their first game this week, 8 of 9 games are about to be on the road. So they've got 3 away here. They get a home game, and then they're going to be away again next week. I don't think for fantasy that impacts us too much, but there could be general percentage down, but I don't think you account for that. Like, you're not sitting LeBron and Anthony Davis. Don't worry about it. They've got 4 games. You play your guys. But I just thought it was an interesting basketball mention. And, could create for some good league pass matchups. All right, that's all I got for you right now. Hopefully that gets you ready for week 7. If you're having a matchup difficulties, go ahead and post it below. I've had people post, the videos about weekly, but I've had people post saying, hey, who do I play? This guy for tonight's matchup and stuff. I try and check on the comments and respond. I'm also on Twitter at bballanalyzer. But posting on the YouTube comments is probably better. You're more likely to get a response from me and from other people out there. There's other things you want to see, episodes for me to do. I'm going to try and do that. We've also, you guys haven't been seeing it, Shad and I had recorded 2 more DFS episodes, trying to get them to you to help you set up your Wednesday slates. But we were just having technical difficulties that it wasn't to the audio and video quality I wanted to release to you guys. So I'm going to try and make that happen this coming week. Change it up a little bit, maybe be more podcast style, less video based. So thanks again for watching. Let me know who you think we should call Lord Hobo, so we can get a double nickname out of this one beer. And happy December, everyone. Good luck. Go out there, win your week. Cheers.